Today, I have Joe Camberato, is the CEO and founder of National Business Capital. It's the leading fintech marketplace, helping entrepreneurs access competitive financing fast through an easy-to-use online platform and experienced team. So, Joe is on the podcast today to talk to us about how to use money to leverage and grow. And then also people, processes, and systems, which have been a key component that has allowed him to almost be at $2 billion in funding for loans, which is mind blowing to me at this moment. But today we're going to get into details of Joe and how we can grow. So there we go. Hi, Joe.
How's it going? Thanks for having me on. It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here. I am so interested I was in finance before, right? I own a company that private labels financial services for credit unions. And
Oh,
so I'm
wow.
on the investment side of things, right? And in the investment world, leverage, leverage, leverage. Okay.
Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
cares that you have a paid off building, right? If you can use that money to do something else and grow faster, you're better off than having this paid off thing or whatever. So I'm interested in how you got into this. Like where did it start for you?
Yeah, it was 15 years ago now, which is weird to say. I'm getting older. Don't let my baby face fool you. I started, I was in the mortgage business, the residential mortgage business, and I had a lot of customers that kept asking me for business loans, and I could not understand why they just want to go to their bank. And they all explained how horrible that process was. And I literally, one customer at a time, started to source and find them lending, and a lot of it wound up being private lending. And I uncovered this because none of the banks would, banks just don't typically work with the typical small business owner. You don't have a ton of profit, ton of equity in your company, or a ton of collateral like real estate that's paid off or whatever. It can be challenging. And if you're growing fast, it's actually more challenging. So literally one deal at a time, one client at a time, I started sourcing and finding lenders, and a lot of them are private. I found this whole world of private lending completely fascinated me. And I was like, wow, I just got this person money to grow their business. If I didn't find this lender, which was like a needle in the haystack, they'd be stuck. And I just really fell in love with it and said, wow, I want to help owners access capital so they can grow their companies. And no entrepreneur, no business owner should be restricted from growing because of not being able to find the right capital, especially if it's out there. So I started just compiling all these lenders together and then building out processes and systems and people, which took some, serious time and a lot of hard work. And, fast forward today, we become this leading fintech platform. We use technology, digital application process, streamline. You can securely upload your financial info. We do a secure bank connection. We can pull your information in, but we do all this stuff really fast. And then there's 75 different lenders on our platform today, and that number is growing. And we have everything from SBA loans to term loans to lines of credit to equipment financing to inventory funding to asset-based lending. So it's all in one place, and you apply, and then through some technology and really great people that have been here for many years that not only get the lender guidelines, also get business, they help match you to the right lender, and we'll get either one or two or three or sometimes 5 offers back from multiple lenders. We do all the work. Wow. So you apply with us, we aggregate the info, our system's connected to multiple lenders' underwriting systems. We grab your info, we push it out, we pull back approvals, we go over them with you, you pick the best one for your business, we get you funded. That can happen in, last month we funded a $250,000 deal in 7 hours. From
7 hours, unbelievable.
7 hours. Yeah, and the owner had an opportunity to buy a bunch of product at a steep discount, and they were able to turn that around and make a huge profit. And they came to us and were like, get us this app, get us these docs, get it to us right now. We can get this done today. And we moved, the deal lined up, it made sense, click, 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 funded. Customers really happy. And there's many, many stories, like that. We fund hundreds of transactions per month. Just looking over this with the team, we've done over 25,000 transactions now since we've gotten started, which is just, crazy. When I got started out of my spare bedroom, I was just trying to fund one deal a month, so it's really wild. It's wild.
I love it. Okay. So when you started in the residential And then you had people that had these needs, and then you found ways to fund it. And then you realized, hey, this is more rewarding. I want to go down this path. And you got out of residential because when did you see the opportunity to just keep growing and growing with this other side?
Well, it's a great question. So I started doing this like 05, 06, and then went like, really at it and incorporated 2007.
Okay.
So that's where the 15 years comes from, where I made it official.
Right.
I felt like at the time, and I was young, I just felt like what was going on in the mortgage world didn't make sense.
Well, yeah,
And
you just got out of that too, because 2008 was, if we can all
um,
remember, a mortgage nightmare.
and I went right into that, starting a company, and there's a whole, that was just chaos, and it was not an easy time to be starting a business, especially connected to anything financial. So even the
Right.
lenders that I was working with, there was a lot of pause and figuring it out. But I did feel, I saw so many owners at that time, prior to like really going at this full force, were either refinancing their house or using a home equity line of credit to fuel their companies. And I was like, wow, there's lenders out there that will do this. And if you don't need to pull equity out of your home, like use your business, leverage your business, keep that separated, right?
Right.
And I also said, well, if this market that was flying high in 2005 and six, well, if that stops and rates go up, or there's like this any type of wiggle, if owners can't access, a credit line or money out of their house, if things change, then there's going to be a real need for business capital. And you're not going to, as an owner, like you're not just going to walk away from your business, right? You might get, knocked down, and it might be a hard time, which it was in 08, 09, but I just felt like there's going to be a big need for capital. And I didn't realize how big that was. And then I was in the middle of it. And obviously it was a tough time getting through that. But what came out of this crazy, horrible recession, I mean, I got my own ass kicked, almost lost my house, went into starting a company, zero, dollars of debt to six figures of debt, and some, money in the bank to no money in the bank getting going. But I fought through that, and, my prediction was right. And what came after 08, 09 was this, business lending boom. And then it turned into this fintech revolution. When I got started, the word fintech, which is financial technology, where you bridge financial and technology together, the word fintech wasn't invented. When I got started, it was fax machines, and most lenders didn't have a website. So now you fill out a digital app on your mobile phone, and we can fund you in 7 hours. It's just crazy.
Oh,
But I was
wow.
in the middle of that, and we've become, really like a pioneer in the SMB lending space. And then all this innovation really happened after that, and we've innovated along the way, and really become a leader and one of the top, marketplaces in small business lending. And I kept just reinvesting, making the process faster, easier, better. Because, as an owner, when you need money, you need it fast. And it's fatiguing dealing with a bank, or if you get turned down from one bank, then going to another, like having to start that process over and over again. We do all that legwork and the heavy lifting. And I just saw that there was a big need, but it was very fragmented. All of these lenders had all these different processes. A lot of times they got most of their lenders from like advisors or brokers. And a lot of the customers don't really go to them direct or even know who they were. So I brought all the lenders into one place. And then I really wound up having two customers, lenders and business owners.
Right.
And I started working with the lenders to say, hey, give me your guidelines. Let me help me help you. I'm going to like streamline this. I'm going to drive you a ton of customers. And then on the customer side, I made it easy for them, so they weren't exhausted of applying. They were able now to apply in one place. And I would, in the beginning, it was very manual, shopping them from deal to deal. It was a lot of work. And then we just streamlined the heck out of both sides of that, and really brought a lot of uniform into the, SMB lending industry.
So did
And
you have to,
became a,
sorry, did you have to
yeah,
develop your own software to be able to do that and get all the lenders on the same
yes.
thing, or could you buy a software plug and play?
So we run on Salesforce.com or Salesforce CRM, right?
Yep.
But we've
Yep.
built out all this tech proprietary builds within and on Salesforce, and we connect different things into Salesforce. So we had to really build, and Salesforce is like a CRM system in general. it's like buying the mold, like Salesforce is a shell of a Ferrari.
Yep.
Then you got to build the engine and get the tires and put the gasoline in it and all that stuff. So, and there wasn't really at the time anything out of the box. And there's some out of the box things today, but it's nowhere near what we've built. And we've customized the whole thing. So, you brought up, systems and processes. I believe in any business, the only way you can win is by doing volume. If you're selling products, you got to do volume to grow revenues and make more money. If you're in a professional services business, you have to be able to service more customers. So the only way to do that in any business is you got to really have your systems really built out and designed for your business, and then processes around those systems and processes in place for people to run those processes. And it's got to be uniform. So it's just, you can plug in, your team and everyone's doing the same thing. Not this person's doing one thing to the customer and then this person's doing something else. So I really honed in on those processes and systems and just continue to build and build and build. And we're always like relooking at those processes and systems and improving. We just rolled something out last month that automated something that 4 people had to do, so and so we're just building tech constantly to be able to do more volume. And we process thousands of applications per month. If you don't have your systems and processes and tech in place, it's impossible.
Yeah, you got a mess otherwise.
And
the beauty of having the systems and processes is it's replicable, right? So you can
Yep.
plug new people in. Everybody can, I get it. It's amazing.
Learn from each other, train one another, because they're all doing the same thing.
Yep.
And everyone follows the process, and it makes it a lot easier to hire and train people. And I think that's a big miss from a lot of business owners is people think to solve their all problems is just do more sales, do more revenue, and it'll fix itself. And a lot of times owners will just try and drive more and do more and do more. But I use this example, if you built a house and you built this beautiful home, like this is your dream house, Jen, right? And you're like, all right, I built the house, but let's just forget about the plumbing. And then you're like, you get up and you're like, all right, you turn the shower on and then water is just going everywhere, right? Like,
right.
That's a lot of times people's businesses is they're like, let me just go build that. Let me just go do more sales, but let me not get the plumbing in order. And they're great at the selling piece because most entrepreneurs are good at that and pushing their team to sell and do more. But then you got to back it up with the back office. We see sometimes owners are great at selling. They're horrible at collecting because they don't have a process around it. So they've got all this money hanging out here. And if they just figured out how to collect that money faster, they wouldn't even need financing, right? So, we're really big with pushing that on our business owners and ourselves, but you got to get the plumbing in order, the back office, all of those systems in order to book more efficiently. Because more sales, if it doesn't, it depends on what game you're playing. But for the most part, if like more sales doesn't equal more profit and it creates chaos in your business, it's just not even, is that really worth it? And, so people get kind of hung up in that. So we're really big with, focusing on all the things that happen after the contact with the customer and the sale.
Right. And so when you went from your one-man band and then you grew, just because I think as we grow businesses, it's a question, what person did you hire next? Like, how did you figure out where to go and who to hire and keep evolving? Because how many people do you have working for you now?
We're like just over 70 internally and about 25 externally. So it's, right around 100.
Yeah.
And it's really efficient, really well managed. We've got an amazing culture. I talk to some people and like, oh my God, you have 100 employees. I don't even know how you do that. And to be honest, I love coming here every day and we're surrounded by good people. So I think step one, I didn't learn this till later on. And some of these things I wish I learned from the beginning, but step one is just focus on culture and good people. It's super important. And it's because of our culture, why we've got an amazing team, why we're 4 years in a row now, top #1 workplace on Long Island. You got to focus on culture. And these are buzzwords now, but I focused on this before they were buzzwords. And that's been a game changer. And it's hard to explain what culture is. I do really feel that you have to just experience it and witness it. But there's not any one thing you can do to create that. It's just doing a number of things, but to me, it's creating a good, fun, positive environment. But that also, like, we go beyond just the job here and, do other things with their team that help them grow, personally as well too, and professionally. People want to learn and be better.
Mhm.
And there's not a cookie cutter or just answer that you could say, like, how do you hire more people and when, you know, there is, no matter what you say, you can get all the data in the world and look at all the reports you want and try and, make the smartest calculations, but there's still this gut instinct and touch and feel, I think, of every business. And, as you're growing, you'll know, like, okay, I need to replace this part with myself here or hire someone. You've got to, in the beginning, especially if you didn't do a crazy round of funding, and even if you did, you still have to do the hard work. You got to put in the hours. You got to get the things rolling. You need to know what's going on to identify what processes have to be built out. And then you got to start bringing in, and people. And one thing that I didn't do is fast enough, and knowing this now, and now I do it very quickly, is I didn't replace myself quick enough. And I held on to things because I was very scared to release them. And I love when owners and entrepreneurs tell me this, and because I said this to myself, no one could ever do this one thing that I'm doing, right? And I
Right.
would say that about no one could do that. Like, I've kind of learned that I'm not that special, and I'm like, I
It's a
think I'm
humbling lesson.
it
Like,
is. And I
we're the
think I'm sharp, but I'm not, that's like, I'm not this like brainiac, you know what I mean? So like, I shouldn't give myself so much credit, and neither should you as an entrepreneur. There's someone else that can do that stuff. Let's be real,
right,
So,
right.
and there's this one thing in particular that was like an Excel sheet and this, and I was like, no one could do this. Well, 10 people have done this now over the last 10 years, like 10 different people. It's been passed along. And then I haven't even trained people in that. Like, my team has trained the next person, and they've replaced themselves and they've grown within the organization, which I want to talk about because that's important too. Um, that thing, I don't even know how to do anymore. Like, so, you got to release things and really replace yourself. But what's really important, and we, built amazing culture. We use Delivering Happiness, which is ran by Jenn Lim, who's the CEO of Delivering Happiness, and that was spun out of Tony from Zappos, and she was partnered with the late Tony Hsieh. Was a game changer for us once we nailed culture. But her new book, Beyond Happiness, really just talks about, and I've talked about this with her a lot, is really building a greenhouse. Like, your company has to be a greenhouse. And what I mean by that is you have to keep growing as a leader to, as I've, as the business has grown, I have to grow in business and personally and professionally to keep up with that growth. It's, you
Right.
have to be committed to that.
It's a
It's kind of
different
like
leader for 100 people than 10 people, right?
100%. And if you don't keep up with that and make changes in yourself and the team and the organization, you're going to get your butt kicked,
Yeah.
But it's really important that you create a greenhouse where others can grow. Because if like, just as I mentioned, like, those people that pass along those things, they started here in whatever position, then grew into a management position. And sometimes it's not always necessarily growing into management, but you have to also be able to grow within that position as well too. And I think if you look at your businesses like a greenhouse where people can, keep growing and move on. And there's been people here that have started, in sales, into team lead, into management, into exec team. So you have to keep, I think it's important that you create those paths. And sometimes you're, depending on your company, there might not be all those paths. So then you have to understand and respect that. What type of business are you? Are you a stepping stone business? Meaning, people are going to step into that role and then move on. And I think a lot of owners fight that. I'll use an example. It's not to knock pizzerias, but if you're a pizzeria or a retail shop, if Sally is working there while she's in college as a cashier and now she's graduated, well, she's going to go off into the workforce and like challenge herself. and you can't be mad that she's not going to be a cashier in your company for the rest of her life. Like, it's not reality. And I love, like, I'll hear this, oh, people keep, leaving. I can't keep any. Well, what position is it? Well, the cashier and the front desk. And I'm like, well, are they in college? Like, yeah. And then they graduate and they leave. And it's like, and you're surprised by this? Like,
Right.
you wouldn't want your, son or daughter, once she graduated school, to move into like the real workforce. Like, is that fair? Is that realistic? And maybe just need to make it easier for people to come and go, into your business versus just trying to lock people in, as they're growing. And I think you just got to get real with that. Or maybe you need to have 10 locations and a corporate headquarters, then people can grow there. And if that's not what you want to do, then you got to be really, I think you have to respect and understand, where your company falls, in all of that.
Hmm. Where do you see you taking the company? I mean, you've grown this far. Like, what do you have goals set for yourself that, hey, this is what I'd like to achieve? Or how do you,
I do. I see us funding $1 billion a year in business.
wow.
And my goal is, National Business Capital is a very powerful name, and I want that to be a household name when you think of, business financing. Like, hey, I need money for my company, I should be reaching out to National Business Capital. And because we're known to have an amazing team of people that get you and your business. We've got great, business financing advisors here that with the company, 5, 7, 10 years. So I just want the company to be known that, wow, this is the team that I need to talk to. I think we're a leading team when it comes to fintech, small business lending, right now, and just want to continue that and just be a real leader, and hopefully an example that others follow as well too.
And what is a small business loan? What would that size be typically?
That is actually a really good question, Jen, because small business can, depending on the industry type,
Right.
and according to like the SBA, can be companies up to 500 employees or even 1,000 employees, depending on your industry. So it's like,
Oh,
you know,
wow. That's not
500
very
person,
small.
that's not small, right? So, when we say small business, we do transactions 10, 5, 50,000, as small as that. We primarily focus on transactions that are 100,000 to about 5 million. We do transactions that are higher. We do transactions that are under 100,000. We have different divisions and teams here that work on those different sizes.
Mhm.
But yeah, $1 million or even $5 million is technically still considered a small business loan. When I think about that, and I think maybe when you think about that, $1 million, $5 million bucks, not a small amount of money, but in the grand scheme of business in this country, when some of like, these, Fortune 100, companies are, borrowing $1 billion, I guess it's small.
Right. Yeah, true. True, true, true. Keep it in perspective for sure.
Yep.
Um, what do you think contributed to your resilience? Because you started off with the wind in your face and
Ugh.
you had some setbacks, but it never, in the telling of your story, it never felt like you were, oh, maybe I should do something different. It was more, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to keep going. Where did that come from?
Well, I have a big history of, worth ethic in my family. And I feel like I owe it to my grandparents came over here from Italy in the early 1900s on a ship. And my grandmother would talk about, sharing bread with her siblings. And that was like their meal for the week, a loaf of bread, and they would all take pieces of it. And, and she worked in a, factory that were not good working conditions. So, I think about all those sacrifices. It really, it pushes me to really work hard, because a lot of that groundwork was laid from her making major sacrifices to where so many people complain about, our country today. Like, there's so much freaking opportunity. And I think you should be ashamed of yourself to complain. Like go travel around the world to some other countries and you'll love America. And
Yeah.
I've done that, and it's really eye-opening. So I think that we have a lot of privileges here that get completely disrespected. So I do take that really serious. I talk about it with my kids, and they're only 2 and 7.
Nice.
I just didn't give up. And there were times where I wanted to throw in the towel, when I had, six figures of credit card debt at, 27 years old, and a $500,000 home, going into foreclosure. And I was like, what the hell did I do? Starting this company, like, I fought through it. But I think the biggest thing was mindset.
Hmm.
And, going through that 2009 recession, I mean, that was a crazy time. It was the biggest financial crash we ever dealt with. I mean, I don't know what was crazier, the COVID or the pandemic, or I mean, they both were crazy and really in different ways. But um, it was just, I had to really put my mindset in check every day. And I had a talk with myself, and I committed, because I was kind of like faced, like, do I just like throw in the towel and just, leave,
Cut
like
ties
go
and go.
figure
Right.
it out? And if I explained that story to you, you'd have said, oh, well, that made sense. And you made the right choice, Joe. But I knew if I did that, I would never be able to live with myself. And I was already so far into it. I was like, well, I have nothing to lose now. But the biggest thing was, I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to show up every day and check all my shit at the door and pretend like none of this was happening, that life was good, and I needed to be in a positive place, because I knew, especially being like a natural salesperson, that if you show up on the phone or in person and you're not positive in a good place, you're not going to get that deal, right? So
Right.
I had to show up and kind of like mind trick myself that life was good, and it really wasn't. But I did that, and my mindset and hard work. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone recently, and they're like starting a company, and they're talking about like their vacations, like like the next. I'm like, vacations. I was like, you need to cancel all those vacations. They looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, cancel the fucking vacations. You're just getting started. Like, there's no vacation. This is
Right.
time. This is work time.
Right.
And
Right.
I was working till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then back in the office at 7 a.m. and was just relentless and just got after it and just did whatever it took. I had zero ego. I would, when I had my first little office, didn't have nightly, cleaning, I would dump the garbage, like whatever it was, like I made it happen. And then, patience, which, I'm getting better at. Um, it just takes time. It all didn't come together to like year 5, 6, and really 7. So 7 years. It would have told me that back when I got started. Oh, it's going to take you 7 years, Joe, to get like this whole thing figured out and put together. I'd have been like, yeah, right. I'll figure this
Yeah.
out in a year.
Right.
And
Right.
I thought it was going to, and then a year comes and goes, and it's not a long time. And I have talks about that with new hires here, and especially like the ones coming out of college or that are younger. We've been spoiled. I have this conversation like, do you use Google? They're like, yeah. Like, you order anything on Amazon? They're like, of course. How about Uber? And they're like, yeah. I go, well, all that stuff just comes instantly. You don't have to do anything, right? Click a button, it's here. All this information at your fingertips. Well, that's not going to be reality as you start your career here. You've got a year ahead of learning. And it takes time to like learn things and to get things going. Now we've got a lot of things established here now, so you can, come in here and really hit the ground running. But when you start something from nothing, building out those processes, those systems, people, management, it takes real time. And I measure things now in clips of 5 and 10 years. Because when I look back over the last 15 years, at 5 years, major progress, 10 years, unbelievable progress, last 5 years, like amazing progress.
Yeah, it's
And
exponential. I mean, I think that's where the biggest thing is it looks like nothing, it looks like nothing, it looks like nothing. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, and here it goes. And then it snowballs, right? I mean, I remember that for my company, and just putting in days and not even, I just didn't even pay attention to the end results. I'm like, I'm going to just do what I can do, control what I can control. And I know hard work works. And I know it's not the sexy sales thing that they sell today, because my kids are convinced they're going to make money on crypto and be bazillionaires. But I'm like, it doesn't work that way, guys. That's somebody else's headline. It's not yours. So
and you know what too, and let's just say they did that, and if they do, God bless them, like,
yeah,
go for it,
amen.
right?
Yes.
Like, but you're still going to need a purpose, and you're still going to need to do something. And if you made all of that money, you would go experience everything you could very quickly, right?
Right.
Buy all the things in the world. And then you'd probably be like feeling like, wait a minute, I was able to buy this, do that, do this, and I've experienced this. and really realize like that having like a purpose and something that's bigger than you is, I think, really what keeps you motivated and makes you happy. Because, you know, if they made $1 billion overnight, I think they'd be bored real fast and be like, what the hell is the point of life? And that's
Yeah.
when you see, I think people have had massive success and they're miserable because you think, well, when I make all of this, like, I don't know if you've done this, but I've said, oh, when I get to here,
Oh yeah, I was
it's
in
going to be
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I'm like, when I make this income, we're gonna be rolling. And you get to that income, you're like, well, that wasn't quite what I expected. So
Yeah, you're
you're
like,
like, okay, well,
why
let's
don't I
double down.
feel, yeah, why don't I feel amazing? You know?
Right. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, no, it's a big lesson, and you better enjoy the journey because the destination's coming, right? And when you get to the destination, if you saved it all for then, you don't even know how to enjoy it
It,
because
it
yeah.
really is. It really is. And there's a cool book I read recently called The Gap and the Gain. It's by
Okay.
Dan Sullivan,
Okay.
who's from Strategic Coach. It's really, really great. He's wrote some really great books. But it's this concept of measuring backwards. You know, like you have to keep moving forward and building and growing. But you know, measure backwards the last 90 days, measure backwards the last 6 months, last year, last 5 years. You know, just think back about, you know, the last 5 years, like, you know, how far you've come and what's changed. And, you know, I think a lot of entrepreneurs do this. They get to these points that, you know, when I got started, I was like, oh, if I could do that. And then you wind up actually hitting it. And you're like not even happy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because now you're like your eyes on the next thing, and you got to keep moving, like, and keep growing and pushing yourself, but you got to stop and measure backwards and celebrate that. And I've been working, like, focusing on that, and it makes a major difference because you're like, holy shit, I am making real progress. And you forget like all the things that you're doing. And you hit the goals that you say you want to, which at the time you're like, if I could do that, it would be amazing. When you do it, and you're completely like, you know, forgot about that conversation you had with yourself. So
Yeah, no, it's an interesting journey and that whole balance, right? Of pushing. Because I feel most alive when I'm at my edge, right? When I'm in the mountains and I'm climbing or I'm doing anything. I love pushing that boundary and making it bigger or seeing where my break is and seeing where I'm going to fall apart and how I can build that back up and become stronger and go back at it. Um, but I also have learned how to just be. And before I was a doer. And now realizing that being is an action, right? Like I
yeah.
being is an action. And sometimes I have to remind myself I do not have to fill every minute of every day at this one speed.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually a real good one. It's funny because I've been you know, that's been like a topic of my mind. I feel like if I'm always not doing something, learning, you know, all this, you know, information intake, it's you know, you can burn yourself out for sure.
Yeah. Where where do you think when businesses meet with you and they want these different loans, do they ever not get them and then you have to give them advice on what to do or how to get into a better position?
Yeah, absolutely. That happens, you know, that happens all the time, you know,
Okay.
And we'll definitely, you know, point out, hey, this is why you're not getting the approval. You know, maybe it's a cash flow thing, maybe you're not keeping enough money, you know, in your bank account or on your balance sheet, which is, you know, always easier said than done, but there are adjustments that you can do to prepare yourself. You know, maybe what you're looking for based on your sales or whatever, it's just not there, you know. So we'll kind of have, you know, those conversations. We'll try and offer like an alternative solution or maybe a little bit less than what you maybe wanted, and then a plan to get you to where you want it over a period of time. But yeah, definitely, it definitely happens. And you know, we take the time to, you know, to talk through that, point things out. You know, sometimes too, we see owners that are growing their companies and things are moving quickly, and you know, there's like a medical bill that they forgot to pay or something that's really bringing down their credit score, but it's putting them into a lower, you know, tier bucket of, you know, pricing or lenders or whatever. So, you know, we'll point those things out and try and help them so they can, you know, clean it up, come back and apply, and at the very least give them something, you know, a temporary solution so they can keep moving.
Yeah. And then with the interest, like I just hear interest rates right now are going all over and we have inflation and all of that. Where do you see like lending going in the next year or so?
So, a lot of those rate increases have really affected mortgages,
Okay.
whether it's commercial or residential.
Okay.
And then any type of, obviously business lending that's tied to prime rate. So it's definitely affected folks. They're paying, higher rates depending on the product they have. If they're in a fixed rate, it hasn't. We're putting people in, and usually put people into a lot of fixed rate type of deals.
Okay.
In the non-bank business lending world, which is primarily where we focus, it's become very competitive, and a lot of people have a lot of dry powder, aka money, to put out there that because of COVID they weren't, right. So
Right.
because COVID was PPP and EIDL loan and all that stuff, so that stuff's done. So a lot of lenders have some money to put to work, and so it's actually pretty competitive. Rates in the non-bank lending world have actually come down.
Oh, interesting.
um, I think, with another rate increase or two, we'll probably start to see some increases in the next 3 to 6 months as we go into the end of this year. So it's never been a better time to apply for business lending. It's really competitive. There's a lot of money out there. But the one thing we talk about with their owners, and when in an up economy and businesses are growing fast, they need more money. In a changing economy, people need money to stay competitive. Maybe deal with cash flow because not getting paid fast enough, whatever it is. Even if the rates go up 1 or 2%, if you really know your business and your ROI, like if 1 or 2% preventing you, from your opportunity, you might need to really reevaluate your opportunity. Maybe need to make some price adjustments. That shouldn't really be affecting your decision making. And if you're using and then if you're trying to get through a tough period, well, it doesn't really matter what the rate is, because
Right.
if capital is oxygen, if you don't have it, you can't breathe, you're out, right? So it's kind of irrelevant if you just need to get through a tough period. It's relevant, but it's irrelevant, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
you
Right.
got to
Right.
look at,
Right.
like, if you're
Yeah,
not
it's not
here,
as
like,
big of a line item as it is in typical home or residential financing. Business,
correct.
the cost of capital, you know how to leverage it, you know your ROI, and can work with it easier.
And a lot of owners just get so caught up in rate and not like what they're using the money for. And if you break down like what you're using the money for, and you really understand that, do your numbers. And a lot of times people just go off a gut. They don't even truly know the numbers. When you put a little pen to paper, it doesn't even have to be the sophisticated thing. Just write up, I'm borrowing money to go buy this, to do this, which is going to make me X, Y, and Z. And if I borrow this amount of money, it's going to cost me X, Y, and Z. And then just do the math. And there's your net profit. A lot of times by not borrowing money will actually cost you more money, because you can't do that additional business, which increases revenue and profit. And then, a lot of times it's a lot cheaper than equity and giving up equity. So you really need to know your numbers and put pen to paper. Don't get wrapped up in what the rate is, get wrapped up in what your opportunity is and how you can use money to get you there.
I like that. That is quotable stuff right there, friend. Good deal. Okay, so what's your favorite business book? What's had the biggest influence on you?
Favorite business book. There's definitely a few. Yeah, I would say Getting Started, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
Okay.
Really talks about building out processes and systems, and um, you know, moving into an owner of a business and not owning a job. Because if you're in the day-to-day and doing everything, you own a job, not a business. Traction, and which is by Gino Wickman, who's awesome, and we use an EOS implementer in my business, and we run an EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Okay.
And right before this call, I was a little bit late, but I had my level 10 meeting, which is a standard meeting with my team every Wednesday, 8:30 to 10 a.m. We don't miss it. And there's a whole structure and process to the meeting, which helps keep us on track, which has been a game changer, in our biz. And then I would say Good to Great is another classic one, which is really just having the right people, the right people in the right seats on the bus.
Yeah, I like that. Who do you have a mentor or people that you look up to get advice from and continue to have you get challenged and grow?
Yeah, I've got a number of mentors and had a number of them over the years, and there's been, certain folks that have had their time in place, and
Yeah.
I'm also been a part of a number of different groups. I'm in YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization, and my forum is 8 other amazing CEOs of companies, and we meet once a month, almost like an advisory board structure, and we help each other be better, push ourselves to grow. And YPO in general is all about lifelong learning. And there's a lot of people that you can almost call mentors that are, in the organization, 33,000 members worldwide.
It's
Um,
33,000 members now.
yeah.
Wow.
And if you took all of the revenues from all of those companies, it would be the third largest GDP behind the US and China, which is just crazy. So really, really powerful stuff. And I constantly work with different advisors. I've had different types of coaches. I've got a CEO coach now. And and it's funny, it's like, Michael Jordan always had an amazing coach, right? Like, so you need a coach to help keep you on track and to push you. So I think all that stuff is really important. And what's interesting in business, especially anyone that started something from nothing, a true entrepreneur, they're very helping with others, like there's, some, young up and coming entrepreneurs that I coach and advise and help. And, and there's been some great people that have done that for me along the way. And I always would say, why are you helping me? And they're like, well, someone helped me and I'm going to help you now. When you get rocking, you'll help someone someday. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very happy to help. So my point is just ask, find someone in your local network, neighborhood, community, whatever, that you see like, this guy is successful, like he's doing something right. Go talk to that person. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I found the same thing. And it's just fun, right? You get, when you're an entrepreneur, you love the energy of starting something or bringing something to life that you have in your head. And so when somebody else is doing that, it's just energizing to be around that energy, right?
Yeah. And I find too, because I don't like, I'm a big, like, no ego person. And some of like young up and comers that, like, I think, maybe at my stage in the game, you could be like, like, just be dismissive. And I find when I'm helping others, so I learn a lot. I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. I'm going to use that in my biz right now. That's awesome. Like, and it that energy, you start to feed off of one another. And I love the new young up and coming blood, because they're just energized, and it re-energizes, me. And it kind of helps keep me on my game,
Yeah, right. I think it holds me accountable. I'm like, wait, if I'm preaching this, I better be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, we've talked about all kinds of stuff. Great books to read, having your culture be like a greenhouse, the importance of mentorship, different types of loans, and how that, what the true cost of a loan is, right? Looking at the opportunity versus the interest rate and how
Yeah.
that can affect your business. And then also how you built out the systems and the process to consolidate and have clients on both sides of the table and meet them in the middle. I love that. So I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we go?
No, I mean, listen, the one thing I'll say is keep growing. The growth doesn't end. I think once you really realize that, it changes your whole attitude and getting stressed out. So keep growing, keep pushing. It's all worth it. If you want to learn more about myself, or my company, you can, follow me, on LinkedIn, Instagram, or on YouTube. It's at Grow by Joe. And if you want to check out my company, explore, funding options for your business, now is the time to really be prepared, especially if there's a big change in the economy. You want to know your options and have access to capital, and you want to apply for capital when times are good. So if you'd like to speak with my team, you can go to nationalbusinesscapital.com. And my team's awesome. Get connected. If you watch this podcast, let them know, and they'll shoot me a note, and I'm happy to hop in a call with you as well too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. Have a great day.
Thank you too. A pleasure, Jen. Do you well. Take care.